Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Speaker.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Gary, let me turn to you. Russia, Ukraine. I mean, it will be the subject of every panel this weekend. But from your perspective as a human rights defender, from your perspective as a dissident, what do you think is most important for these esteemed audience members to know about the current state of affairs?
I don't know where to start. So I can say probably that I'm incorrigible optimist by nature. But my natural optimism has been tested lately. My first article about existential threat from Vladimir Putin to the free world dated back to January 4, 2001 in the Wall Street Journal. That was the year where President Bush looked deep into Putin's soul and found something there. And Senator McCain wisely said that looking at Putin, you should only look at his forehead and see three capital letters, KGB. Vladimir Putin, as every dictator before him, always lies about what he did. But very often, as every dictator before him, he tells us what he's going to do. We should remember that Mein Kampf was published in 1925, and that was a blueprint. But who paid attention to a leader of a small nationalistic party in Germany? Who could have imagined that 8 years later they would be in power? Vladimir Putin made all these statements being in power. So back in 2005, he said the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century. Was it clear? Yeah, I'm not sure Putin already was convinced that he could deliver on his promises, but that was in his mind. Every statement Putin did from the very beginning, by the way, his first act as president of Russia was to restore Soviet national anthem. You say symbolic, absolutely. Symbolism, that's in the core of every dictatorship. So his intentions were very clear. It was about opportunity. And the free world offered him these opportunities. Just again, not to be mistaken, back in 2007, at the Munich Security Conference, looking into the eyes of the leaders of the free world, Vladimir Putin said, NATO must go back to 1997 borders. Didn't he? Response? Nothing. Next year, just to prove that he was not just throwing words, he attacked the Republic of Georgia. The reaction? Nothing. By the way, it's in a few years after this invasion, I wrote an article in the Wall Street Journal, and I said the next will be Ukraine. They asked me, how did I know? I said, I looked at the map. And again, I believe Vladimir Putin. We have to believe dictators. By the way, when you look at the list of their promises, they keep delivering on them. When people say, Iran, oh, it's for domestic consumption, they want to destroy the state of Israel. No, they want to destroy the state of Israel. Yeah. This is very much the policy. So that we made this mistake in the 30s of the last century. We're making this mistake now. And Vladimir Putin is very serious. So in 2014, after annexation of Crimea, I was dead sure he would go for the whole Ukraine. Why? Because he said it. Because Russian propaganda 24/7 kept saying that. Ironically, nobody wanted to hear that. I wrote the book, Winter is Coming, Why Vladimir Putin and Enemies of Revolt Must Be Stopped back in 2015. And the reception was quite timid. Yeah, I was viewed as, oh, it's a Russian radical. Of course, he hates Putin. And yeah, yes, I have reasons to hate Putin. But it was not a threat just to us. My great friend and ally, late Boris Nemtsov, had been repeating time and again, Vladimir Putin was our problem. But if you did nothing, he would be everybody's problem. Back in 2005, 2006, 2007, the years where Vladimir Putin could have been stopped. So we did nothing, and Vladimir Putin built his military presence. And I was quite shocked, when people still discussed whether Putin would attack Ukraine or not, when he brought 200,000 troops, surrounded Ukraine from north, east, and south, brought half of his Pacific fleet from Vladivostok to Black Sea, and I was still debating, is it, it's a bargaining chip for negotiations? You don't have to ask anyone, political pundit here, listen to Russian propaganda 24/7 since 2014. They kept repeating, Ukraine was not a state, Ukrainian nation was not a real nation, we have to assimilate them, They kept saying that, and Vladimir Putin, as every dictator, had to deliver on his promise. What's happened? Nothing happened. So should I remind esteemed audience, so many top brass here, on February 2nd, 2022, last year, General Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, testified on the Hill and said that argued against giving Ukraine any weapons, didn't he? It's in the record. Why? Because the Ukrainian army would be destroyed in 2 weeks. And the weapons would end up in the hands of Russians. I found it a little bit cynical coming from someone who 6 months earlier left tens of billions worth of American weapons in the hands of Taliban. But that's what was expected. What was the CIA forecast for Kiev? 96 hours. So that's why when we are applauding our NATO unity, we should remember it's cemented by Ukrainian blood.
Yes.
And the same leaders who are now debating how to help Ukraine would be sitting and negotiating with Putin, trying to salvage pieces of Ukraine. No doubt about it. Ukraine, for Biden administration, was a bargaining chip in the negotiations, alongside with Iran. Iranian deal was a part of that. And Ukraine was there. So losing part of Ukraine would not be a problem. And by the way, tell me, I'm a Russian, I'm earned rights to be paranoid. Tell me that as we speak now, Jake Sullivan and Bill Burns are not negotiating with Russians the partition of Ukraine. Anybody is willing to say that now, just it's not happening? It is happening. Because this administration doesn't want Ukraine to win. That's very clear. Because the war could have won a year ago. Why we're talking about $60 billion, $100 billion package? The weapons that Ukraine needs to win the war are collecting dust in American storage. Thousands of tanks, ATACMS, F-16s, Grey Eagle drones. It's all sitting there. But the great strategists are calculating distance for ATACMS not to reach the bridge. Because Bill Burns promised Russians not to attack the bridge and not to interfere with Russian, as he called, domestic affairs. So this is a sad truth. That's why we don't hear Ukraine must win. My apology for Canadian minister who said it today. But Americans always say we stand with Ukraine as long as it takes. The phrase is not finished because it could be we stand with Ukraine as long as it takes for us to make a deal with Moscow. So all
right, Gary, let's.
Oh, okay, fine.
That's enough to chew on, and I'm not going to try to fact check that whole thing.
Just to finish.
Yeah.
Just to finish
really?
that
Okay.
regarding Russia.
Right.
So I always say that this. You don't expect changes in Russia before Ukrainian flag is raised in Sevastopol. And my only wish is the Russian men will have half of the courage of Iranian women.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll have another chance, I promise, to talk. I'm not going to fact check that all, but just point out very quickly
I'm happy to answer.
that the administration does not acknowledge that it's
Don't fact
negotiating with Russia.
No,
The partition, they would contest that. We're going to leave it. We're going to leave it there.
Yeah. Not denying. Can you deny it?
Okay. Well, I can't. I'm not in a position. I'm just.
Ask them.
Just for the record, that's not been established. But anyway, let's move on. Okay. Russia, China, Iran. How does that union of actors impact the work that you do, Gary?
First of all, I love the word "crink." It sounds sleazy. So that's, I'm not sure, but it's good. The only problem is it's missing Venezuela.
Yes.
So we have to remember that there's another member of this crink, whatever it is. So find a way to install this V there. And by the way, this when we talk about all these potential hotspot on the map, please at one point we should talk about Venezuela, Guyana, the Crimean-style referendum that Maduro is preparing now. Obviously, with some whispers from Moscow. So again, they work together. And we should not be mistaken by the fact that it's a small group. As Senator Shaheen said, there are only 4 or 5 of them and we are many. Yeah, but they are devoted. We got 40 countries helping Ukraine, but Russia's military budget is over 20% of GDP. So that's why, again, Russia is small, compared to the global economy, but with 20, officially, probably is more now. So that's why, again, we should recognize that dictators now are just it's just not united. They know what is at stake. I'm not sure we do. So, and also we should remember dictators never ask why. It's always about why not. And I agree. It's about the cost. So I can bet my bottom dollar that the last doubts about attack on Ukraine in Putin's head had disappeared when he watched the video of Americans stampeding Kabul. That's it, What can you expect from these people? So, off go.
Understood.
So,
let's pause there. And let me move to the next question because we're running a little bit low on time. I'm sorry, did you have a closing thought?
It's about this cooperation. I mean, as for cooperation, Russia and Iran, we know that. But it's not just, Iran supplying drones. So Russia has been supplying drones nuclear technologies for decades. And also, it's this no doubt who was behind Hamas attack. It was a very sophisticated attack. And by the way, simple question. Israelis had all the cameras there. How they could have missed such an operation, well prepared with all the details, with Delta plans? It means they had another training base. And I bet you it was a training base that was protected from American surveillance. So I guess it's not just Iran. And also, Hamas used very sophisticated drones to destroy Israeli defense. So what countries are cooperating now closely creating drones? Ukrainian friends can tell you that every week they come up with some new improvements. Russia and Iran. So again, you can find them all over the place. As for China, I think it's a nuance here. So yes, China is behind them, but China does not get involved directly. Obviously, China is encouraging Central Asian nations. So just recently there was an article, I sent information to Globe and Mail about Canadian electric detonators for mines being shipped to Russia via Kyrgyzstan. Welcome, thank you very much. So, or French gunpowder via Kazakhstan. China is definitely behind it. But I think the Xi Jinping is trying to actually see, what's best for him. Attacking Taiwan could be costly. But don't forget, there's one country that China looks as at a potential prey. The Chinese official claims to Russia, they amount to 1.5 billion square kilometers. The entire territory from Vladivostok, which by the way is no longer Vladivostok on Chinese maps, in Haishemin, to Lake Baikal, was China until 1860. So that's why I think he's happy to see the war going on and on, because potentially instead of going for a rocky island, which is armed to the teeth, and potentially having American aircraft carriers, he has a much better opportunities in the north. So but of course, right now he's trying to gain all the advantages. And I want to remind anybody that the signature of a dictator on a treaty is not worth of paper. It's put on.
Gary, the last time the House voted on Ukraine aid, a majority of House Republicans voted against it. And that's 117 House Republicans voted against it. They're responding to their base. What do you think how did it get to this point? And what do you think can or should be done to make the argument to young conservatives in particular that the Ukraine project is something worth supporting?
No, I think it's the same kind of ignorance as on the left about Israel and Hamas. Because it's quite ironic. I already said it, but I can clarify it. Whatever is $60 billion or $100 billion, this is not money given to Ukraine. The lion's share of this money goes to American military manufacturers because it replenishes the stock. What Ukraine needs is something that's sitting in the stock now. Tanks, F-16s, ATACMS, Grey Eagle drones. It's sitting there. And it's not, what the Pentagon is using. It's in the storage, collecting dust. So the money will be paid to American manufacturers. By the way, it's quite ironic that most of American defense industries are in the red states. It's quite. I never checked, exactly how the members of the House voted. But most of the money will end up in places like Arkansas or Louisiana. So that's again, this is what you can find out. So very little, by the way, goes to Idaho and New Hampshire. I just checked before I entered the stage. So
it's spread around.
I just saw the recent polling done in Iowa. Actually, this is quite conservative state. And again, it's about the question you ask. Because again, it's one of the problems people don't understand why we're fighting in Ukraine. This is the key. So what is the goal? Because if it's a war, it should be the goal. In 1943, in January, in Casablanca, FDR and Churchill publicly said, unconditional surrender. And don't tell me that the Wehrmacht in 1943 was less formidable force than Putin's ragtags. So in 1943, before the end of battle in Stalingrad, Japan was there, Italy was there, unconditional surrender. That's a strategic goal. So if you know what you're fighting for, then there will be a solution. There is a will, there is a way. But as of today, it gets very unclear. As long, as it takes, it's not the right message. So I believe that, if people are given clarity about American goals, why it's important, connecting Taiwan, Israel, bringing it together, that's how we can actually sell it to American public. Again, because everything I saw from the polling depends on the questions, how you do that. And of course, you can easily turn it around. Just, changing a few commas and a few letters, you can get the result you want. And again, at the end of the day, it's not about money that being voted by the House, administration can decommission these weapons, put $1 tag, and send it to Ukraine. Again, if there's a will. I can remind you that it's from June 22nd, 1941, when Hitler attacked Soviet Union, to the end of this year, America sent to Soviet Union, to Stalin, 360,000 tons of weapons, ammunition, and food. 360,000 tons at a time where the Nazis controlled the entire Europe, and the Arctic route was infested by German submarines, and Luftwaffe was in there. Still, if there is a way, if there's a will, there's a way.